Hi, everyone. I'm Annika, and we are the conference coordinating team for the Massachusetts Undergraduate Research Conference. Today, we're going to go through how to write a research abstract for the Mass URC. So this is the one thing that you need to submit in advance for the Mass URC Hub for the conference. So it's a good thing to kind of begin thinking about if you haven't already. And our deadline for abstract submissions is Friday, February 23rd. So that's just something to keep in mind. But so today we're going to go over how to write a research abstract, and this is going to be a guide for Mass URC presenters. For some of you, you may have written a research abstract before, so this will kind of serve as just like a refresher. But for others, this might be the first research abstract that you've written. So today we're going to go through step by step the whole process of writing a research abstract and breaking down the different components of a research abstract. So this can kind of serve as a good guide as you begin to work on this. So first, we're going to break down the basics. So what is a research abstract? So a research abstract is a brief summary that encapsulates your research. Lengthwise, it's typically a paragraph long, and we have a 250 word limit in the hub, which is where you're going to go to submit this abstract. And its purpose is to act as a preview that captures the core of your work. So you can kind of think about it like a snapshot of what you've done in your research and what you've found. It's a quick glimpse that sets the scene for your work. And to give you a little context, in the academic world, when people are researching a topic, or if they're doing like a lit review, they'll often just read research abstracts to get a sense of the research before actually like downloading the PDF or paying for it or trying to read it further. So this kind of determines if they want to, download the full paper and dive into your research further. I say all that because you want to kind of think about your abstract as like an elevator pitch for your work. So what does a research abstract consist of? Let's break it down. First, we have your introduction. This is where you set the stage by introducing your research question or the problem. Then we have your methods. This is where you briefly explain the experimental procedures that are employed in your research. Then we have your results. This is where you summarize your key findings without interpretation yet. And then conclusion is where you can kind of get into interpretation. And this is where you can highlight the broader significance of your study. And Ava is now going to begin by diving into each of these components in greater detail.
So first we have the introduction section. And the purpose of this section is to introduce your research question or problem. So this is where you'll provide background for your audience. And here you'll show what's already known about your topic, as well as what's unknown and will be discovered through your research. So for example, in this study, we investigate the impact of social media on academic performance. You'll want to keep it clear and concise in order to avoid losing the engagement of your audience. Second, we have research methods. The purpose of this section is to enable the reader to understand how you've conducted your research. You'll want to include information such as the sample size, the duration of the study, and so on. For example, we conducted a survey of 300 students and analyzed the data using statistical models. Be sure to provide enough detail for clarity without overwhelming the reader and without yet revealing your findings to your audience. Next up are your results. So this is arguably the most important part of your research, as those who read your abstract are likely to be curious about your findings. So you'll want to focus on summarizing your key findings without interpretation. For example, our findings reveal a positive correlation between social media use and low GPA. You don't have to include all of your results in this short abstract, as this will distract from your most relevant findings. So you're going to want to focus on presenting the most impactful results concisely.
So next up is the conclusion. So the purpose of the conclusion is to highlight the significance of your findings and show what it all means in the bigger picture. So for example, the sentence, "These results underscore the need for educational interventions to assess social media distractions," allows the writer to connect their findings to real-world implications. Find a way to show the significance that your work holds to the reader. And so now that we've gone over the different components of an abstract, we're going to help you put it all together and just provide some pro tips and some common mistakes that writers usually make that we suggest you avoid. So for some tips, we suggest that you be as concise as possible, aim for clarity and brevity when talking about your research. Try to use as much clear language as possible. And so that means try to avoid using any technical jargon that makes your abstract accessible to a broader audience, because we just ask you to keep in mind that you're going to have readers from all different kinds of academic fields and different levels of experience as well. And we also ask you to highlight key points. And so you want to make sure that it's really easy for the reader to tell what's important in your abstract and what isn't. And some common mistakes to avoid are, we ask that you try to avoid any unnecessary details, try not to go too deep into the trenches when talking about your project, and try to stick to the essential aspects of your research, especially since you only have 250 words to summarize your project. So try not to use too much of it on unnecessary information that the reader is not really going to benefit from learning. Try to proofread for clarity. Remember to go back over your abstract, or even have like a professor, academic advisor, or friend read over it so that you don't miss any errors or gaps in your writing before submitting. And remember to provide context. So again, remember that your audience is unlikely to be familiar with your work and maybe even your academic field. So try to make sure to add at least a bit of background information to help your audience understand your research. And so, yeah, that's all we have for you today. Thank you for coming to our presentation. Since this is recorded, if you have any questions, we ask that you email us at conference@honors.umass.edu. And yeah, thank you.